to the August 28th edition of the PFF Forecast. I'm George. I'm joined by Eric, who's fresh off of wearing a pink tank top in Vegas. So we're going to have some stories from that. It's going to be exciting. We're also going to talk about some injuries that have happened in the preseason, whether they matter or not. We'll talk a little Tyron Smith. We're going to follow up on Tom Brady's absence and whether or not I have been proven emphatically correct by his comments that came afterwards. And we're going to get Eric's thoughts on the sports betting industry after he spent 48 hours in God's country in Las Vegas. Let's rock. You're not wearing the tank top now. I'm the one wearing the tank top at the moment, but you had what you called a pink tank top, and maybe I'm colorblind, but I would like our listeners to go to your TikTok and to identify what this tank top was all about, because it was something interesting. Where did you buy it?
I want to say it was either like at your favorite store, Target, or maybe the Gap or something like.
Okay.
I was. I let fewer body image issues than I've had before. Also, I gotta say, it's fucking hot everywhere in this goddamn country all the time. Sorry to swear, but you go to Vegas and it's like it's literally the sun is just trying to kill you there. And then I come home to Cincinnati. It's 98 degrees today. The volleyball gym that my girls play at is not air conditioned, and it's just run by fans, and it's just my shirt is just I'm sweating through my shirt. I'm with other parents just sweating through their shirts. And I'm just I get it now. I get it now why these bros wear tank tops. I get it now.
I thought you were going to say
it's more of a salmon color than a pink color. I will say that.
Okay, that's
not
fair.
that I have any problem with wearing pink. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, I honest to goodness did the VSiN. So I was on with our friend Tim Murray, our friend Sean King, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, was the backup quarterback when they won the Super Bowl in 2002, and I was legit wearing a process over results T-shirt above a pair of damp swim trunks, because we were out. We went to the the funny thing is, and this is why this is why I went this weekend. It was the last week to sign up for contests, and so I saw our friend Rob Pizzolo, who I know listens to the show. Rob had a very cool thing I wanted to talk about with Blackjack. It was really funny. Sam Panianovich, who hosts the Chicken Dinner podcast, Seren Petro, who is a friend of the show. He was there with his crew. They were at the Mirage, so we went swimming at the pool with them one of those days. And then it was kind of a crazy, it was a crazy collection of people, I would say. But yeah, it was an interesting time because it's still in August, just extremely hot there, and it's to have something like a tank top that can actually keep you somewhat cool is actually probably a good move. Plus EV.
I love that you're discovering tank tops at this time in your life. That's phenomenal. The thing with the Vegas heat that you point out is, yeah, it is hot. I would rather have that heat 10 times out of 10 than the volleyball gym without air conditioning in Ohio heat. Let's just be extremely clear on that one. It's very important to note that those are two different types of hell, and one is definitely way worse than the other. Which contest did you sign up for?
So we signed up for the Westgate contest in college football was one. We put one entry in that, and then we put 3 entries in the Circa Mega Millions. We have a couple friends, Ben and I have a couple friends that kind of want the sweat but don't want to do the work. So we kind of are going to, we're basically being free rolled on a couple of them. And then the college football one's going to be interesting. We had a hard time, so we went to the Oyo casino to sign up for the Westgate or the first contest with college football. It took like 2 hours to do, which was ugly. That's where I got the Rashawn Gary. I found a stray 50-1 to win Defensive Player of the Year, so I went ahead and bought that. But yeah, I'm excited for that. I haven't played in that contest since you and I went in 2018 and signed up. And even then, I was like incapacitated by the time we signed up for that contest.
This was your first time signing up, really?
Yeah. I feel like I wanted to be blacked out the 2 hours it took for them to like get it all to work. But yeah, it was a good time. I'm looking forward to that part. I still gotta say, like, I'm gonna say a lot of like negative things I think about Nevada sports betting. The experiences, though, the atmosphere. Look, the atmosphere is amazing, right? Like Circa is this unbelievable. I don't know, the guy who came up with the idea, not for Stadium Swim, but for the actual Circa Sportsbook is a Detroit fan, and the reason they have that overhang over the sportsbook is because he wanted it to look like Camara Park or like old Detroit Tiger Stadium, which is kind of cool. And then they have the VSiN, studio right next to the sports book and all that kind of thing, and like it's really well set up. They have a bar that's like extremely long, but then it's like next to all the games, and and that's like even different than the sports book part. And then obviously Stadium Swim is amazing. So that the atmosphere for sports betting in Nevada, I don't think has ever been better. The actual products that they offer all suck compared to sports betting offerings in all the other legal, like not all other legal states, but like a legal state with a freaking clue completely it crushes Vegas in terms of like the experience and the offering.
You're talking about just betting like on an app.
Yeah. I mean, even like, but you like I ran it up on FanDuel last week when I was in Indiana for the Colts game, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get to go to Vegas here, and it was basically like, oh yeah, you can't use the FanDuel app here. You can't use the DraftKings app here. And, you can use some, like MGM you can use there, and like some of the existing situations you can use there. But you can't, like imagine being in Indiana and, and again, this is very degenerate and very niche, but it's also where this thing is going. But imagine, like, FanDuel lets you bet on player props in the WNBA. It lets you bet on player props in CFL. Bet Rivers and DraftKings let you bet player props in college football. And my cousin Kyle actually messaged me after the show the other day, and he lives in Omaha, which is close to Council Bluffs, Iowa, and it's where sort of he bets. And he was saying, he's like, by the way, Bet Rivers and DraftKings have started offering college player props now. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. And like Vegas doesn't. Like Vegas doesn't offer, like, most of the places in Vegas didn't offer like anywhere close to sort of the volume of player props that you'd be able to do. And this was the craziest thing. They had an FCS offering, and they at the book I was at the MGM book at the it was the Delano basically. And then there were some and then there were FCS and there were FBS offerings. There were the crossover games, so like Western PA versus Austin PA versus Western Kentucky, but they wouldn't let you bet live, either at the counter or on the kiosk. And like the offerings were just like egregiously limited there, right? And in addition to the fact that it's brick and mortar and you actually like legit have to like go up to the counter, and then like Ben and I were doing the calculus of like, okay, should we bet this game because our flight's in a couple hours, and if it wins, we're not gonna be able to like cash it out and all this stuff. And the betting experience is not good in Vegas. It's extremely, like, I would say recreational, but very like lowbrow recreational, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think nothing explains that better than the attempts at making it more frictionless are nowhere near as frictionless as it is to do just about anything else in Vegas. I think that's the thing that I like. You can bet, you can go play black. Think about how easy it is to play blackjack. Like they will take your money in blackjack. All you have to do is show up to a table, put cash down, and you're done. Like you're ready to go and you're playing. The difference between that and betting on a game, or in any kind of way that you want, is there's a noticeable difference between the two. The creativity, I think, to what you're speaking about, the creativity of the offerings that are there is also one that reminds me of a place that is not leveraging technology well enough, right? And like, to me, I think that's a huge part of it. Is you go to some of these other places that are new and they've had no choice but to bring new things to the table, right? Because they're innovating. And Vegas, to a certain extent, has said, no, we don't want to innovate. We kind of want to stay the same, for lack of a better term. I mean, you went to Stadium Swim. I've talked about this many times. The fact that I can't open my phone and bet while I'm there, and yet have to go down to a kiosk and get a PhD in using this stupid kiosk in order to place a bet. Oh, not to mention have to use the ATM that works half the time. Like, that's bananas to me.
Well, it's not even that, right? You can't. So when you're in, and granted, it's once you get into Stadium Swim, you can go back in, right? And for somebody like me, relatively pale guy, like I don't sit out there for 5 hours in a row. Like I go back in, grab a drink,
feel seen,
betting, all that kind of stuff. But if you want, let's say you live bet a game, you can go up to the kiosk and bet it, but you can't cash your tickets out until you come back into the casino.
It's ridiculous.
And that's kind of nuts. And if you play blackjack, you can't cash you can exchange money for chips, but you can't exchange chips for money out there either, which is insane. And I think I mean no disrespect to Circa. I think Circa creates extremely sharp lines. I think Stadium Swim is as good of a betting experience or atmosphere maybe as I say experience and atmosphere. When I say experience in this way, I mean like it's freaking cool, right? Like to sit next to a pool and watch all the games.
The way to experience the bets you've placed. Yeah.
Exactly. But then the experience being like, I just want frictionless sports betting, and that's not necessarily like happening there. That is rough. Like the fact is, like some of the biggest names in sports betting, FanDuel, DraftKings, Barstool, I believe Barstool is also not available in Nevada. This is egregious. And I can sum it up no more succinctly than this. When I'm at I'm sitting there at any one of the sports books, and it was like 3 or 4 when I was there. And I'm sitting there, and our friend Josh Norris comes up on the TV in that ad for Underdog Fantasy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love Underdog Fantasy, great product. I go to log into Underdog because, I just want to like do a little like $3 whatever fantasy game, and of course you can't use it in Nevada. So it's like they're advertising for something that's illegal where you're sitting, and it's just like, and it's just like the state of the industry is of that ilk right now, right? Where it's extremely ambiguous as to what you can do. And, as our friends, it's a very good podcast, by the way, Circles Off, if you want to go read, listen to Pizzola and Johnny Capo from BetStamp. They do a really good preview episode on the NFL. Like, they're basically saying, like, open up a ton of books, get a bunch of, post up a bunch of places, and shop for the best line, which is great advice. Even if you can't handicap to save your life, you'll lose less at the very worst by doing that. And I fear that, like, in the state of Nevada, it's actually extremely hard to do that. Like, and maybe by design, but, that's where I think, like, the industry is failing right now because it's, like, it's so ambiguous that somebody can't get ahead by using all the tools in their toolbox.
Yes. And by the way, Circa does it better, has a better betting experience than any of the other books in Vegas. I mean, it's a great point. And it's actually something, frictionless sports betting is going to happen at some point, right? And, where it happens, how it happens, who innovates on it. It's going to be very, very interesting. I like to think that we're going to be one of those places that does so. But when you talk about like going around and shopping for the best line to lose less, it's interesting. I'll be very surprised to see how that manifests itself in frictionless betting, because part of frictionless betting is people not wanting to do a lot of thinking and wanting to get skin in the game quickly, like you did with the underdog thing. And to me, one of the biggest keys there is having technology that works wherever, right? Like that's the big thing. You know, it's like, how frustrating is it when you try to use a product and you can't? Before we move on, this is a good time for us to talk about Underdog Fantasy, because it's the best and easiest place to play fantasy football this summer. The best thing about best ball, I've used the word best many, many times, but that's because it is the best. You pick your team, and then you don't have to worry about who you're going to start, who you're going to sit, who you're going to pick up, because the best players with the most points automatically get entered into your lineup every week, and then you can win based on how good your team is that you drafted, not how many times you remember to pick up a guy on waivers on Tuesday evening. I think that's the time. God, I can't tell you how frustrating that is for me. Get your chance at $10 million in total prizes with Best Ball Mania 3 and use promo code PFF on your first deposit and get up to $100 doubled with your sign up with promo code PFF. So deposit 100, get 100 for free added on. And if you play 10 of those dollars, you get a PFF Plus subscription with promo code PFF, which is an incredible deal. It's a ridiculous deal. So go to Underdog Fantasy, and there's only a few weeks left for NFL kickoff, so draft your team. Okay, any other last thoughts from Vegas? I just want to say, you know, people are like, well, why didn't George go? What's George doing? It pained me. It really pained me. You know how much I love Vegas. You obviously said, hey, man, we're going to Vegas any way you can make it. I mean, the pain that I had seeing your social media, talking to you, obviously, hearing the different things that were going on, contemplating, could I hop on a flight? Could I do this? But it was true pain. I am going to try one way or another. I've got to sign up for I usually do the Super Contest. I think I want to do the Circa Millions this year. It might literally be the day before the season starts, Eric. That might be the only option for me.
You almost have to, and yeah, it's important. I think you know, for the listeners to know, like you said, like you're especially this way, but like we're not just podcasters. We have other jobs at PFF, and you're certainly, I think, if not one of, if not the most important person there. So there's there's just a time constraint. We're trying to make sure all the users are extremely happy with the app and all that. So I think that people will understand. It was very interesting. So I actually went up to an event with our friend Rob, and it was at the Circa, and it was interesting. They had a panel on sports betting, and they had Derek Stevens, who sets the lines for Circa.
Derek Stevens owns the Circa Sportsbook and hotel. So
sorry, then there was, who was it then? I'm trying to remember who the odds maker was. It's an odds maker for Circa. He was extremely smart and really well spoken. And then it was Adam Chernoff, who covers the website, and he's great. I've been on his show a bunch of times. One of the more, I mean, the cool thing about sports betting is like the really successful people here. You know, like we talk about Rufus and Rob and Adam and folks like that. And it's like they're really thoughtful about how they answer things. And they're extremely smart, even and in a world where like going 54-46 will make you a lot of money, they like really understand the two sides of it. But the panel also included Brian Urlacher and Sean King, and I like Sean a lot. Like he's a great host on VSiN. I think I consider him a friend, but like the funny thing was, they had this panel, and the questions that the people there asked, you had them submit or whatever, the questions that they had them ask were incredibly, like they were almost all directed towards Brian and Sean, and they were questions that Brian and Sean were like not equipped to answer. They were like, are there certain coaches that get worse calls than other coaches? Are there like literally data-driven stuff that like there's no way my brother in Christ, Brian Urlacher, has the answer to this question. And it made me think to myself, it's like there's still so much value in creating evidence-based sports betting content because the zone is being flooded with this money right now, and I can't imagine what they paid Brian Urlacher to fly out to Vegas to do this like 1 hour panel, but it could not have been, it could not have been like the most edifying thing for the people. Like if you ask Adam, and Adam like gave away a couple of his plays, and like he talked about his reasoning for them, and he gave a really cool answer about how Sean McVay is a different handicap when he's ahead versus when he's behind. Like there were really good and thoughtful answers given by the people who actually do this. And then there was, hey Brian, what do you think about the NFL emphasizing illegal contact? And he's like, man, I think they should just call what's on the field. It's like, bro, like that's not what we care about. We care about if the overs are going to hit because they're extending one drive per game more than they were a season ago. Like. And so, I think that my takeaway there is just like there are extremely smart people in this industry, and they're getting some of their due, like for sure. But there's also like an appetite for entertainers in the industry, and I wonder like if that's ever going to go away or be different. I don't know.
It's a really good point. It's not easy to find.
Chris Bennett, by the way, is the odds maker there.
Oh yeah. Chris is great.
So I meant
a lot of really sharp guys that are making lines for Circa, obviously. The funny thing is that, to your point, there's not a lot of the content in betting is extremely bad, but it's a tough thing, right? Because it's like it's kind of what people want. So. And let me give you the example here. People want to bet quickly. They don't have a lot of time. They're looking for picks. They're looking for a sense of like, oh, this is a good pick. I'm, betting with this person or betting with this person. And they feel a connection, a sense of community. They're more, the function that they're looking to maximize isn't necessarily one that measures money made, right? A lot of it is engagement. A lot of it is, do they feel a part of something that they want to be a part of, whether they're winning or losing, right? And so you get a lot of this content that doesn't include, things that you actually want to learn as a bettor in an interesting and convenient way. So it is a really, really good point where, people would be more likely to go bet something with Brian Urlacher because he is Brian Urlacher than they would be to go bet with, one of us or Adam or any of the guys you mentioned, even if they have a really data-driven position and they say, hey, yeah, I think I have like a 2 or 3% edge on this play, and explain it and talk about it and give their rationalization. And I think we'll get to the point where that won't be as much of the case. I think investing was kind of this way as well, where it's, I don't think it still has a little ways to go, but there's some similarities there. Let's talk a little bit about some of the NFL stuff that we've seen happen. So I want to bring up the Tom Brady thing again because we had a good. You
were right.
Well, I think this proves a lot of my points. So I don't know if you saw the clip while you were in Vegas, but Brady comes back to practice. They ask him about the absence in the press conference afterwards. And he goes, kind of exasperated, I would say. I got a little hint of exasperation from him. And he goes, I'm 45. I got a lot of shit going on in my life, man. Give me a break. And to me, that basically says, yeah, this wasn't a planned thing. Now, whether it was something that was Giselle driven or something that was family driven, like I think to me this shows a little bit of the fact that it wasn't planned, and that's fine. I'm not saying this is wrong, by the way. I'm just saying that I think I was right in that this wasn't something that was planned when he unretired, and I don't think it doesn't make me worried about whether he's going to perform this season. But I do think I'm right, is what I'm saying. Are you in agreement? Have you come over to my side now?
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you though that I think like if the question becomes like if he does this make you less likely to like them this year though, because it's very clear that there are I wouldn't even say commitment issues, like whatever. The guy has earned this, right? That's my whole like thesis on this is he's earned this, but does he does he give you any more of like he might not last the season vibes, or he might be bad vibes? Like, I mean, we talked about. I mean, if you look at like the history of this league, like Brett Favre was 10 touchdowns, 19 interceptions his last year. Peyton Manning was 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, I want to say, or 10 touchdowns. Dan Marino was 12 touchdowns, 17 picks. Troy Aikman, his last year, and again, I'm just using touchdown to interception ratio because it's like everybody kind of knows it. And back then we didn't have PFF. Troy Aikman, his last year, 7 touchdowns, 14 picks. Like these guys, like oftentimes for these quarterbacks, the universe tells them that they're finished, not that, you know, they don't normally opt into it themselves the way that John Elway did after winning 2 Super Bowls, or, you know, Brady was going to after this year. Like that's really the sticky wicket, isn't it?
Yes, but he was going to retire as the best quarterback in the NFL this past year from like a grading standpoint. Like I think that's the difference, is there's no, if anything, he's getting, dare I say, better in some regards. I mean, his arm strength, there's no issues to it. It's not like he's ever been super mobile. Obviously, his mind continues to be extremely sharp. So, you know, to answer your question, no, I am not concerned. And actually, if I look at the opening week's game, which is Sunday Night Football, and they're playing Dallas in Dallas, the part of that equation that I am worried about is the Dallas Cowboys, where I think the biggest injury that's happened so far over the past week or so has been Tyron Smith, torn hamstring. He's out. Jerry Jones said that he could be back for the playoffs if they make it. But now you look at that offensive line. Lyle Collins in Cincinnati was their right tackle last year. Tyron Smith now out. And you think back, we have bet against the Cowboys a few different times when Tyron Smith has been out, most notably the Falcons game where our guy Adrian Claiborne had like 9 sacks because we thought that Tyron Smith wasn't going to last the game. He didn't last the game.
By the way, can we pause? I know not everybody's listened to this show for that long, and that game predates the PFF forecast. That was our lock of the week back when we used to go on the PFF NFL show and give out a 10-minute segment, which you and I would spend 40 minutes on every single week.
That's it.
That was the lock of the week. And that week, I was visiting my parents in Minnesota. I was driving back to Wisconsin, and I believe that game was on Westwood One. And so I was listening to Westwood One's coverage of the National Football League. This is Tommy Ty. And I was listening to that, and it was a classic Falcons game where the other team was just handing it to him on a platter, and like Matt Ryan would take a sack on 3rd down, and or like Devontae Freeman would fumble into the end zone for a touchback. It was like the classic Falcons game. And I just remember you texting me being like, shit, fuck, shit, like the whole time. And I remember just texting you like, George, unless they're behind by like a touchdown or like 3 touchdowns, like all you're doing is tilting me right now because they're ahead by like 3 scores despite how bad they're playing. And like we should have known. Like back then, the Falcons had all the advantages in the world, and we're still just like, remember week 17 that year too? We had that was like that week was so bad because they put no game on Sunday Night Football in 2017. That was your first year heading that process up. I remember that, and the only game that kind of semi mattered was at like 4, and it was Carolina playing for a seed, right? And Carolina was the division champion Carolina was in, but the Falcons had to win to get in the playoffs, I think is what it was. Win or see Seattle lose. And the Falcons were like, 4-point favorites. We made them lock a week. And maybe this is like, that was it. Like we made the Falcons lock of the week like 4 times that year, and they were like 3-1 or something dumb. And my brother in Christ, that game was like 23-10. And the Falcons was a 23-point Falcons effort that year. Somehow they made a meal out of having Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and like all those guys on the team. Matt Ryan still playing really well. Remember that year he led the league in drops on 3rd down? It was just like the most egregious, like sweat like that betting them was just the worst sweat every single week, and they'd pull it away back then. And of course, that was just a harbinger for things to come because they rip out our hearts the next like 4 years after that. But like, those were the good days. I feel like those were so pure, even if they were Falcons induced.
Back to the Cowboys. How concerned should we be about the Cowboys? And thinking about this opening game, right? You've got Shaq Barrett, 13th in PFF grade with an 81 last year, has been a consistently really, really good pass rusher. Will be over there on Dak Prescott's blind side. Who he'll be going up against? I mean, will it be, let's look at PFF.com right now and see who's up next. Josh Ball. Will it be Tyler Smith, who they drafted to play guard? On the other side, you have Terrence Steele. He of a 60.9 PFF pass block grade. Zach Martin is amazing, but you look at the outside and at tackle, and it's not good. It's not pretty. I don't know, man. I am concerned if I'm a Cowboys fan, and as someone that has bet the Bucs already in this Week 1 game, I feel pretty good about where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I certainly with Joe Tryon, Shoyinka, and also Shaq Barrett, and then also the packages that, I know that he's not calling plays anymore, but the blitzes that the Todd Bowles defense likes to put together. You also, frankly, don't have the wide receiver talent for the Cowboys outside of CeeDee Lamb that you had before. You're basically asking Dalton Schultz to be that secondary target in that offense, which is we saw tight ends step up last year, namely, Dallas Goedert as well as Mark Andrews when things got bad for those teams. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, Tampa, starts out with Dallas on the road, and then they go to Saints on the road. I mean, if they start 2-0, pack it in for the NFC, right? Because they host the Bucs, then Chiefs. So their first four are really tough. At Cowboys, at Saints, home to Packers, home to Chiefs. After that, it's they play the Rams and the Ravens. And other than that, it's just like a complete cluster of teams. Maybe the Niners will be good by December. But, man, this first 4 games matters a lot for Tampa. And I fear, that's where it really is. That's maybe where Brady is, looking and saying, look, I don't want to be, worn out by that time. I want to be fresh for these first 4 games. If they start the season 3-1, they're the 1 seed in the NFC, with a bullet.
Yeah, no, I think you're very right, and the point about the receivers is also good. It looks like they're going to have a rookie out there with CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert. How good has he been in the preseason? Does it matter? No, Jamar Chase was awful in the preseason. It was amazing. I'm not saying Jalen Tolbert is Jamar Chase, but there's going to be some getting used to that receiving core for Dak. If he's also not being protected, then that's going to take a little bit longer, right? That's just the fact of the matter. So I'd be concerned. I'd be very concerned. You don't have your 2 starting tackles from last year. You haven't made any meaningful upgrades there or investments there. And you're going against a defense that has a really good defensive line, has one of the better blitzing linebackers in Devin White, has an aggressive defense, and yes, Dak Prescott has been very good against the blitz, has a better than 110 passer rating versus the blitz, I think, last year. It's been increased every single year. He's phenomenal at that. But there are a lot of new pieces. So I'd be concerned. I'd also be thinking about the Philadelphia Eagles and, whether they might actually just be the best team in this division. I don't think war of attrition is real, and the Cowboys have lost Amari Cooper and Tyron Smith. Those are really, really incredible players. Maybe they're second and third best offensive players from last season, and Lyle Collins, who was probably top 5 and most important there. So it's going to be interesting to see where they get to. Are there any other injuries or notes from Week 1 as you look at the Week 1 slate? Where you go.
Yeah, actually, I don't know how serious this is, but TJ Watt was ruled out of this 3rd preseason game with a knee injury against Detroit. That
would not be
that's
good.
crazy. Our own Ari Merab posted this. Yeah, that's crazy. So, I don't know what that does. I mean, you look, Watt might be the one of the few defensive players that actually has value beyond half a point or so there. We've seen we've seen it's that number has been taken down off of Pinnacle. So that could be Bengals minus 6.5 in that game. You might get to the hook there. I mean, I think when you look at, obviously, some of these, I mean, when you look at Jets, Ravens, that was one that been pushed out to 7. Joe Flacco has been, fairly ordinary looking in the preseason. And I think that is an interesting one. You've seen the Chiefs move out to minus 3.5 because they've had mostly an injury-free preseason. And I think people wanted to see them kind of show something. And I think finally you're getting some money on the Raiders because the Chargers lost J.C. Jackson, and they've had sort of other issues at times with things. So yeah, that's kind of the tale of the tape there.
That's not good at all. T.J. Watt is injured. That's really bad.
The third preseason game, which is just what are you even doing there? What do you find? This is like an entropy problem. How much information is actually being gathered by having Watt play in a game like that at all?
Zero. There's no reason to play him in that game whatsoever, any way, shape, or form. Before we get out of here, we have one more thing to talk about, but before we do that, you can get 25% off PFF Plus right now with promo code FORECAST, FRECAST. Also, I will let everyone know, we've talked about it a little bit. You can go download the PFF app right now. Go to the App Store, type in, search for PFF, and it will show up there. You can download it. It's going to give you a lot of really cool things and a lot of things that are going to be coming kind of quickly over the course of the season for you to work on for you to enjoy. I need to get more sleep, I think. But we want to hear how you like it, so go check it out and then let us know what you think, what's confusing, what you're enjoying. All of those things are super useful and important. You'll be able to get all of PFF's great content wherever you are with just a tap on the PFF app. So go make that happen. Let us know what you think. Also, if you go to DraftKings will hook you up as well as we head into the season. You can get ready for NFL Week 1 by doing the following. Let's say that you have not signed up for DraftKings yet. Now is probably the time for you to do it. Use promo code PFF when you sign up. Bet just $5 on any football game and get $200 in free bets instantly. Those are issued in $200 worth of $25 free bets. So you bet $5 and then you get 8 $25 free bets, which is awesome. You can go place them on whatever the hell you want. Use PFF to make sure that you get the best options. Obviously, I would say some player props might be a good move for you. And of course, our player props tool never disappoints. My favorite thing on the site, and will be in the PFF app as soon as player props are made available. So go to DraftKings or the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use promo code PFF when you sign up. Take advantage of this awesome offer. Bet on any single football game, $5, and get all of those free bets automatically in your account. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Get those $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet. You don't even have to win that bet. You just place that bet. That's promo code PFF at DraftKings Sportsbook. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for terms and resources. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Here's my favorite part. In Tennessee, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. In New York, 877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. One per new customer, minimum $5 deposit and wager. $200, as I said, issued as 8 $25 free bets. And I'm just gonna get rid of all the reads here. We're gonna talk about Symbol, SIMBULL, which is a basically stock exchange, if you will, for sports teams. You can buy stock in different sports teams and then see it rise and fall based on how those teams are performing, and you can collect a dividend payment from Symbol. That's SIMBULL. Go download the mobile app on your iOS device by searching SIMBULL in the App Store. Use the code FORECAST and receive a free team stock valued at $150 upon signing up. You can join many very smart, sharp people out there. Again, speech, not my number one skill, on Symbol, where they are trading their favorite teams and capitalizing on their hypotheses at Symbol, SIMBULL. Okay. Somehow made it out of that. Made it kind of.
You're much better at that than me, though. Like, let's. So I think that the listeners have to sort of like be able to appreciate how much better you are at that than me. It's sort of like, how do I say this? Like, I'm sort of the change of pace running back on those that averages 5. I'm the Tony Pollard who averages like 5.5 yards a carry on those, and you're the Zeke who
it's just consistency.
People bite on your play action better. You are tougher, but your efficiency isn't as good because you have the volume. You have to deal with the volume, right? Like there's something to that where I think that like the football intelligentsia misses out on the whole oh, this guy's great in a backup role. It's like, yeah, but that's because like the by definition, like he wouldn't get those backup touches if he was ass, and so he does get them because he's not ass, and like the efficiency is better, right? Like, and if you increase volume, efficiency goes down. Look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady's yards per pass attempt is like in the 7s, versus somebody like Kirk Cousins who's in the 8s. But that's precisely because the Bucs ask him to throw more, and there's value in that ask, right? So there's value in you having to write those say those reads.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That makes me feel better. Okay, we're going to close out here with a few week 1 games that we still like. If you haven't listened to the last podcast, we talked about week 1. But we know that people are coming online and checking things out as we get closer and closer to the season. So we want to make sure that we keep mentioning these. And lines have moved over the course of the offseason, obviously, and the past couple of weeks. Seeing the Colts get out to 8.5. Our Niners -7 now. They were 6.5. Our Chiefs -3.5. People have been very impressed with the Chiefs in the preseason. The Denver Broncos now 6.5 point favorites, total of 42 on Monday Night Football. Geno Smith announced to be the starter. I am assuming that 2-point move was not a Drew Lock from Geno Smith move, but that one is interesting. It opened 4.5. It's now 6.5. Where are you going right now if you're looking to bet week 1? Where are some of the spots that you like?
Yeah, pff.com/greenline/NFL. If you were on pff.com/greenline/NCAA, yesterday we were up 2.23 units, which is always pisses me off because we were up like 6 units halfway through, and then I was wrong about Charlotte, and I was wrong about Hawaii. Both teams were short, were like a touchdown underdog. Both got absolutely hammered. I will say your 49ers, Chris Reynolds, got hurt after throwing a touchdown the first drive of the game, and they put 2 backup quarterbacks in who were legit worse than me. So that I'll give that one to the game. One guy threw a pick 6 with 2 seconds left in the half, so that was a backbreaker. They were so bad that they put an injured Chris Reynolds back in the second half to try to like stabilize things, and that didn't work. Hawaii was just like, a joke. They got up 7-0 too, but after that, I think the Commodores put up like 56 unanswered. So, anyway, pff.com/greenline/NFL. I'll say this. Here's a couple I like. I'm going to fade, I think, a little bit of the pro-Jacksonville narrative on this one because this one has dropped to -3. I'm going to take the Commanders -3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars on opening day. I know that this is a revenge game for Carson Wentz, and I think the NFL is genius for putting them against the Jaguars week 1. Mm-hmm. Wentz played horribly, played the Indianapolis Colts out of a playoff spot in week 18 last year. He gets the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars will be much improved, but I think even without Chase Young, offensive line's better. Jaguars are counting on Trayvon Walker, who I just don't think is going to be that good. Devin Lloyd at linebacker as well. Secondary is not great still. And Washington comes at you with some pretty damn good receivers. And a good defense. And I don't think Jacksonville has put together the weapons that I think they necessarily believe they do. Now, Jaguars are a team that's going to try. So unlike Chicago versus San Fran, you do have to you don't have to bake in whether or not Jacksonville cares. They care. They're like under the cap, or they're over the cap next year. Like, this is the year that they want to compete. So that's the only thorn in that one. But I like Washington laying the 3 on opening day in Landover against the Jaguars.
Look at you showing so much growth by coming over to the Commanders side after you hated them so much last year. A couple of
isn't that the sign? Like, I think that's the point. Like, we're not betting. Like, I think this is a thing that a lot of people who aren't necessarily sharp say, but it's true. You're not betting teams. You're betting numbers, right? Like, the numbers have just been, if Jacksonville was opening up last year against Washington, what would the spread have been?
7.
Right, because Washington was a 1-point underdog last year. It was basically a pick 'em. It was like in that sort of -1 to +1 range against Los Angeles Chargers last year at home, right? So let's even and again, these points aren't all worth the same. So take that with a grain of salt. But would you say the difference between last year's Chargers and this year's Jags is 4 points?
No.
You know what I'm saying? I think it's a little bit bigger than that, folks. And so that's kind of where I am on this. It's all about, and there aren't that many edges to be had in the NFL. The edges that you have in the NFL is believing that, not only the media, which is what was true about Washington last year. The media, certainly pumped that team up. But it also has to be a little bit of the sharp betting groups, because the numbers don't move off of what our friend Mina Kimes says on ESPN. They move based upon what our friends who bet big amounts of money do. So that's where I'm where my theory on Washington is this: they're a very underrated team in the NFC, and there are other underrated teams in the NFC, namely Detroit and Minnesota, who the media love now, right? You think about the number of glowing things being said about Detroit, and I'm to blame for the Detroit one, and then Minnesota are such that those teams aren't a value right now. They're not. The value's been sucked out of those teams. In fact, if anything, I would probably take Philly in week 1 if it ever got to -3. I don't think it will. But that's kind of where I am in Washington. You bet teams, you don't bet teams. You bet the numbers on the teams. You bet the implieds on the teams. And in this case, I think the implieds are way too unfavorable to Washington.
Agree. A couple that I like that I've talked about a few times, but I'll mention again. I think we mentioned this last week. Cleveland, so Carolina, they've named Baker Mayfield there. He had a nice preseason game. I love nothing more than fading a little bit of preseason success. And the Browns are starting Jacoby Brissett. No one's excited about that, but the Browns are a much better team across the board than Carolina. And you're getting plus money. You can bet them on the money line right now. I also like over 41.5 there. Again, I like a lot of overs, 41.5 in San Francisco and Chicago. Justin Fields has actually looked, decent, and he's going to run. He's one of those guys that, he's not going to give up. They're obviously going to keep trying in that game, even when San Francisco gets out to a nice 3-touchdown lead with future MVP Trey Lance. Bucks, -1.5 in Dallas, over 50.5 there as well is one that I like. And there still are some teasable numbers out there. One that the Ravens are -7 in New York against Joe Flacco. I don't know if anyone saw Joe Flacco's throw today, but it did not inspire confidence. I would be concerned about the Jets and Joe Flacco going against Baltimore in that game. I know you're not getting through 7, but from 7 to 1. You also have the Niners that you can get down. from 7-1. So some opportunities out there. Colts, you can take down to 2.5. That's probably the best teaser line that's out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to tease favorites, it's obvious. It's your Niners, your Ravens, your Colts, and Bengals. Now 3 of those teams are road teams, and two of those games are basically divisional rivals in week 1, which there are surprises, right? Like and this wasn't a divisional game, but we had Pittsburgh +7 at Buffalo. I guarantee you Buffalo money line killed a lot of teasers last year, right? Mm-hmm. Just be careful about those ones. I will say, and I'm not going to give out any more because we have a week's worth of shows. In fact, next Sunday there are no NFL games. They're giving the teams a bye, which I think is extremely good idea by the NFL. But we like a lot of overs, and here's the thesis on it, right? So last year we made all the green line models we made with assuming 2018 was the league-wide scoring environment. We have remained with that assumption, even though we did see decreasing in scoring last year. We saw scoring go down 2 or 3 points, maybe more last year. I got to put the numbers in front of me. And that was in large part due to home field advantage, which we think will only, sort of get, strengthen, I guess, relative to 2020 in the COVID year, where offenses on the road were actually slightly more efficient than offenses at home. But at the same time, you do have the talkings of illegal contact being called more often. If that happens, a drive in the NFL is worth 2.5 points, right? Or it depends upon the team, but 1.5 to 2.5 points. If you extend one drive every 2 games, then the end result of that is a point more, right, on average. So that's something I'm thinking. We're baking in indirectly here. Once we have our simulation up, we can bake that in directly, but we're baking that in indirectly there. That's why we're on a little bit more overs, and then the totals are just lower, right? I mean, last year, you had totals in the high 40s, 50s, kind of all around. That was in vogue, and Buffalo, LA is 52. Kansas City, Arizona is 53. I actually like over there just because, I think Arizona's defense is going to be terrible. Kansas City, I think, will have a good defense, but I'm almost always wrong about that. So I think over there will probably hit. But you look here, New England, Miami is 45.5. New Orleans, Atlanta is 42.5. Baltimore, New York is 44.5. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati's 44.5. Jacksonville, Washington's 44. Indianapolis, Houston's 44. You said Cleveland, Carolina's 41.5. San Francisco, Chicago's 41.5. Giants, Titans is 44. And then Denver versus Seattle's 42.5. Those are low totals, right? If you got a total like that in 2020, I mean, it would almost be an auto bet over unless you were dealing with the Mason Rudolphs of the world, right?
Yeah. It's a bunch of low totals, and let's talk about this more next week, as we'll probably see a bunch of new or returning members of the printing press joining us as we get closer to the season, and we'll talk much more in depth about week 1. We'll be able to talk about some contest picks as we get closer to the season as well. Talk more about the assumptions that we're making in the models that you are getting on PFF.com and the PFF app. So it'll be a lot of fun. We will see you guys all on Wednesday. Enjoy the last week of preseason football and get your rest in so that you can hit the season in good shape. Hopefully the best shape of your life. We love you. We'll talk to you. See ya.